On this episode, I want to give you the inside scoop on the recently concluded Roger Waters Europe and UK tour called This Is Not a Drill. Relive the magic as we recap the best and the not so great experiences while on the road. As your trusted guide and advocate for optimization, I will bring you an exclusive update on all my current tools, hacks, books, and upcoming events. In the final segment of this show, we set our sights on the future, discover what lies ahead for Simply Walk the Talk as we outline our plans for upcoming episodes featuring a stellar lineup of new guests and exciting content. We will challenge ourselves exploring thought-provoking conversations, delve into diverse topics, and continue our mission of inspiring listeners to walk the talk.
Welcome to Simply Walk the Talk. Our bodies and minds adapt to what we do most of the time. If you want to change your body and mind, you must change what it is you do most of the time. This podcast explores all things health, wellness, fitness, lifestyle, and biohacking. Stay tuned as we explore various thoughts, methods, and experiences from a multitude of conversations between our interesting guests and experts through many fields of work. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Simply walk the talk. Simply walk the talk.
Gordon, we're back.
Back.
You know, this is one of those situations where if you can't tell, if you've been following this show, you might notice the familiar background. I'm home. I'm in New York City, and I am happy to be back because this has been probably the longest 4.5 to 5 months of my life. And you know, like I mentioned in the intro, there's a lot of amazing opportunities that I'm going to talk about for the fact that I get the opportunity to work on tour and travel the world and get paid to do so. You know, it's like, it is great, but at the same time, there's a lot of things that weren't so great. So maybe we'll just start there.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious because I think people only see one side of things and they think it's all sort of rosy and all just lights and glamour. But I think it's important for people to kind of see both sides of things so that it's a little bit more grounded and kind of gives them a sense of overall. So, yeah, man, launched into it. I'm curious, what were some of the highs and lows?
I mean, maybe it's best to start with, I'll do a little bit of each, because on the one hand, like I started this most recent tour out by getting a chance to go to Gstaad or Stad, as they say. It's in Switzerland. I had never been there before. It was one of the places that was on my list, and I had an opportunity to go a few years ago, but for whatever reason it didn't work out. So I guess the timing wasn't right. But Roger and his wife asked me to come a little bit early ahead of the tour to come and join them, and it was incredible. I mean, this place, if you've never been there before, it's literally like billionaire or millionaire's village. And it's like two major streets. It's very small, but everyone that's there, I mean, it's like, it's the who's who of wealth and power. And for me, it was interesting because I didn't know what to expect. And I knew that we'd be going from there to England, and then we would be starting the tour in Lisbon. So for me, it was a little bit of a bouncing around, and quite frankly, I didn't have a lot of time to prepare like I thought I was going to be able to prepare. And what I mean by prepare is, let's face it, like I have a lot of stuff, right? As a health coach and a fitness trainer, I have loads of stuff. So I'm kind of the guy that, like, when we're traveling through North America or the US especially, it's easy for me to leave some things at home while I'm traveling, or I can have certain things sent out to me, but I cannot do that when I'm in Europe or I'm not in the US. It just doesn't work the same. So I had to be very diligent on how I packed, and I managed to have only 3 bags. I think the 3 checked bags, and then I had like a handful of backpacks and other hand carry luggage. But speaking of luggage, that is something that I'm going to put out there now. For anyone that has any sort of connection with a luggage company, let them know that your boy is looking for a sponsorship because I really feel like I put so much wear and tear on luggage that if I was able to find a company that could kind of live up to the torture that I put luggage through, I feel like it would be easily one of the best out there. And I think I could promote it in a way that would be really good. Currently, I've been using Samsonite, and their stuff is really good, but it's almost like every single tour I go on, I have to throw a bag away. And, and it's like, obviously you probably understand that you can get insurance or you can get a warranty, extended warranty, but these warranties usually only work in the location that you got it from. And then when you do drop it off somewhere, that means you're still stuck without a bag, right? So it's just like, I wish that the luggage people could get this worked out, and who knows, maybe this is the right platform to talk about it. So anyway, yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah.
no. I mean, I think there's definitely probably a lane for that. I haven't done too much research, but I think a lot of times luggage is, I don't know. I guess there's got to be a whole range of luggage that's just for like durability versus like a luxury market. But
Yeah. I mean, I think
maybe
I
there's a
think it
lane.
is. I mean, there are some really good ones out there. I mean, obviously, right? But then, like some of the more durable ones are heavy, so
Hmm.
then I can't put as much stuff in it. And then the other ones that are more luxury, they're good, and they're good with like having locations where you can sort of drop them off anywhere around the world, but the expense is insane, right? It's just
Hmm.
expensive. Like Toomey, I love Toomey's products, and their stuff is really good and it lasts and it's very durable, but it's expensive, you know.
Right.
uh so anyway, I'm just throwing it out there. You never know what happens with this kind of thing, but that's just came up out of nowhere. So some of the highlights of the tour, some of the best moments was, the last time that I was in Europe on tour was in 2018. And like always, a I have a knack for meeting and networking with people. So this tour was a really good opportunity to kind of follow up with some of the people that I didn't get a chance to see in the last 5 years. So for me, that's a huge highlight, even if it's something as simple as going to have coffee or to have dinner
Hmm.
or to go out and party. Or sometimes I only had the ability to send people to the show. Of course, they're very thankful, which is always also awesome. Um, but there was some time that I didn't even get a chance to see the people that I invited to the shows because I was too busy working on various things. So I guess that's kind of the highlight there. That's a good uplifting moment for me to be able to see people I haven't seen in a long time.
For sure.
Um, Also, like some people I only know through social media, so to actually put like
Yeah. Yeah.
a physical component to it is really cool.
Yeah.
Um,
Closing the loop. It's important, to kind of finish creating that bond and having it come together like that.
exactly. Yeah, and then I'll just mention like one other thing that is kind of a downer, but it taught me a really good lesson in travels. So this might help someone else out in the future. I've been on many tours, and this was the first time that I basically was when I got to, let's see, I came from Stad to England to London, and the lady at the it's not TSA, but like basically TSA,
Right.
the border control. Yeah,
Yeah.
the border control lady, she comes to me, and I'm again, normally everything is working like a very fine-tuned machine, right? And so I've got
Right.
Roger, his wife, driver, security people, and they come to the car, and they come to me, and they're like, Mr. Holland, you need to get a new passport immediately. And I'm like, huh?
Uh,
They're like, you need to get a new passport because we literally had to search to put this visa into this passport. And there was literally only one space available. And that's the only reason why you're able to get in today. And I was like, what? So I had to go to London to get what's called an emergency passport. So it's purple with gold lettering, and
I don't know what this
yeah,
is.
like
I didn't know
I
this existed.
yeah, I didn't either, but it's like when things work well, they work well, and and luckily I have a lot of support from the people that work on tour. But
Yeah.
that was a bit of a nightmare, and I never thought about it because, I mean, I don't know about you, but when I travel, I don't I don't think to myself, okay, how many available pages do I have, right? And
Hmm.
when you're on tour, like you're supposed to have, I think, I think it's at least 10 pages available because of the amount of places you're going to be traveling to. And obviously, once I told them about my situation, the tour managers, they sent out an email to everyone on tour saying, "Oh, by the way, make sure that you have at least 10 pages available." They didn't throw me under the bus, but I just thought that was a very teachable moment, and I
For
think it's
sure.
worth mentioning. So it's a potential downside that is something that we can all learn from, I think. So
For sure. For sure.
anyway, moving on. So a couple of the things I wanted to talk about in the beginning was
Hmm.
the tour, some of the downsides, some of the upsides, meeting and catching up with old and new friends. Something else that I think was a little bit different on this tour is the fact that the workload for me was a lot greater this time around. And I'm in a unique position to be able to work with someone like Roger in that I can sort of dictate how my work is, like how I carry out my work. So, for instance, on the last tour in 2017, 2018, when there was a show day, I sort of I basically said that I am not working. Like it was, I would be around, I'd be available, but I didn't want to do anything with, it's like there was no need for me to train him because, we didn't want him to be sore or exhausted while he's doing the show. And I changed that up this time because I saw the importance and the need for stretching and doing a thorough warm up with him. And I was also giving him ketones for every single show. So now we did
Mm.
that in North America, but we continued that here in Europe and UK. And of course, with that means I had to make sure to pack enough. I had to, like basically I had to like ration out all of the supplements and the ketones and the peptides. And so
For sure.
myself and Roger, we basically utilized ketones and peptides throughout this entire tour. And I'll probably do more of an in-depth conversation about what peptides I was using, but I'll just say for now that peptides are the future for sure. And, a lot of people have been hearing about Ozempic and
Yeah.
semaglutide and things like that. I don't think it's worth even going over that too much right now. But
Hmm.
what I will say is that be on the lookout for some content with peptides because there's a couple of companies I'm looking at partnering with so that I can continue that up. And I've been doing everything from nasal sprays to, and probably at one point I was doing way too many. I think I was taking like 6 different peptides at once, like literally. It was very expensive, but it's like I'm a biohacker.
Yeah. Yeah. Gotta
um,
go hard sometimes. Did you
yeah,
notice, because were you able to kind of notice comparing Roger, sort of like A/B testing with Roger to really see when you integrated these new things into his routine? Did you really get to see like, as kind of a good test of what works well and what doesn't? And then do you now kind of feel like you're kind of at that optimal, or do you still really feel like you're tweaking?
great question. And absolutely, the answer is absolutely. Saw a very noticeable difference almost immediately. So now, keep in mind, I only had Roger doing the nasal sprays because let's just face it, like it's a bit annoying to have to like have alcohol wipes and diabetic syringes and having bacteriostatic water reconstituting the peptide powder and then drawing it to the right amount and putting it in your stomach every day. Like that's annoying for most people. However, Roger and I both did that after we both got our hernia repair surgeries. So both of us had hernia repairs ahead of this tour. So at the end of the last tour, during the break, we both got hernia repair surgeries. I don't know if I talked about that much on this show or not, but we both used the peptide BPC 157, which is known to be a very, very potent and efficient, effective healing peptide,
Hmm.
and it's one of the ones that I've used all forms of, from tablets and capsules and nasal sprays to injectables and topicals.
Hmm.
So my favorite in that, though, I think is the injectable, because I feel like you get the most of the efficacy from it.
Right.
But what I gave Roger on this tour, just to kind of make life a little bit easier for him, is a nasal spray. And the nasal cavity is also very, very good at absorbing whatever
Hmm.
chemical that it's being introduced. So it was good. But what I noticed and what he noticed was that some of his knee pain and his ankle pain. So at the very beginning, when we were in Lisbon, before we did our first show, I had Roger working out, and we had been working out quite a bit anyway, but he ended up sort of tweaking his ankle when we did a run on the rooftop of the hotel, and it had this nice track, and it was great, and he's running great, and doing well. But he mentioned, he's like, "Hey man, I did something to my ankle. I don't know what happened, because nothing happened when we were doing the workout, but like the next day he was like, dude, something happened to my ankle. I don't know what's up."
Hmm.
So obviously I'm like scrambling for everything, and I'm doing massage, and I'm doing, I have these red light devices called the Kineon Move Plus. They are
Hmm.
the red light and medical laser device, which is one of my favorites on the market, hands down. I always have that with me. And I had him doing that daily. And, he got a little bit better. But even I think it was the first one or two shows, Roger mentioned on stage how he's like, "Yeah, I kind of messed up my ankle a little bit. So that's probably why you won't see me moving around as I usually do." And for me, it's like, oh, like I want to hide into a corner when he says that kind of stuff, on stage. But nonetheless, we got through it, got him on the peptides, and his knees, his ankles, his shoulders, his hands, everything got tremendously better from a simple nasal spray. And of course, I had him taking other supplements as well. But all that to say is, yes, it's
For sure. Yeah.
very anecdotal, but he and I both healed very quickly from our hernia repair surgery,
Right.
and and that's that. So
And do you feel that's something that in the future you have as an option if he does sort of like have a sort of a, because was it just like a sprain ultimately, or
um, I think it was a strain.
gotcha.
Like I
Okay.
think he slightly strained his low calf or the
Mm,
Achilles. And I mean, it may have been a sprain, but he didn't roll it or anything. So I
gotcha.
think that he just went too aggressive from being in sort of an elevated shod shoe. So a shoe with a slight sole, a
Mm,
heel, to barefoot running
mm,
without a progressive transition. I think it was a little bit too quick and too aggressive. I think that may have been it. But at the
mm.
same time, he could have also stepped on it wrong when he was, in his hotel room. And I didn't know about it, right? You just never
Gotcha.
know.
Gotcha.
So,
Interesting.
um, so definitely stay tuned on the peptides. I'll be talking a lot about that and the various ones that I use. There's this whole manual that I have that is incredible, that talks about all the amazing peptides. So we'll talk about that. I think we've talked about ketones before in a couple different situations on this show, so I won't belabor that either. But I quickly found my go-to in terms of ketones. So
Mm,
for a while, I had been using Kinetic. Kinetic is probably the best tasting ketone supplement on the market. HVMN Human is also a really good one. I was using that all throughout the first tour, or the North America tour. But when I brought Frank Yosa on this show,
mhm.
he's the founder of Ketone Aid, and I quickly realized the difference amongst all the different ketones that are out there, and the fact that the Ketone Aid is a much smaller dose, or it's like a much smaller package for a big dose or a bigger amount of doses. That became my go-to for the tour. And he was kind enough to send a bunch of the hard ketones out to me in various locations, so I got a chance to booze up on some of the hard ketones. Like
I
you
mean,
probably see.
yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
I remember when he was on the podcast. Here's the for the audience, we have visuals of his ketone aids, and he has a variety of products. But the one that does have, um, what's the term? Keto hall? Keto hall. That's a really interesting concept, and that's a whole lane where, if you get the taste down and everything, it's pretty exciting what it can mean as far as like how you feel after, drinking normal alcohol and energy and these sort of things that usually, the downsides of basically alcohol.
Well, this is the perfect segue into one of the next things I wanted to talk about, which was um, my birthday celebration. And so I just turned 42 years old. I'm a
Congrats.
Gemini. My birthday is June 12th. So I was in London for my birthday, and it was an opportunity where the tour wrapped up. The last show was June 10th, which means that we didn't get back to London because the last show was in Manchester. So we got back to London super late on the morning of the 11th.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't want to do anything too early, but I ended up having a birthday celebration on the 11th because everybody else was leaving on the 12th. So I was like, okay, I want to be able to go out. I got it together with a couple of my colleagues, some of the security guards, and obviously throughout the tour, they don't get a chance to drink and go out and hang out because if they're working, I'm not working, and if I'm working, they're not working. So we don't ever really get a
Right.
chance to do things together. So we were like, man, let's go out, let's get, let's have fun, let's drink, let's do whatever. And I had these keto halls, these hard ketones sent to me, and luckily it arrived in time because I knew that people were going to be buying me shots and doing all these things, and I also took the regular ketones like the KE4, which is the small green one, has 12 servings in it. Doesn't taste great, but it was definitely like a good N of one case study to say that if you incorporate ketones with your drinking, chances are you won't have a hangover or you'll have way less of a hangover. And
Mm-hmm.
that was definitely the case for me. So I had more drinks that night than I probably ever have. Well, that I've had all year, let's put it that way, because I don't drink that much. But I had a few drinks and woke up with no hangover. And the only thing that I could feel was the fact that I didn't get a lot of sleep
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't go to bed till late, and then I ended up waking up early, just because that's what my internal clock has me waking up early anyway. But I will say that it's a really cool hack for those of you that do want to drink, and it's like you can drink your preferred choice of drink. So for instance, when I go out, I've kind of created, and I may not be the first person to do this, but if you guys want Josh's favorite drink, I do what's called a espresso mezcal. So instead
Oh,
of an espresso
tequila.
martini, I do an espresso
Mm-hmm.
mezcal, and that drink, ladies
Huh.
and gentlemen, is amazing, right?
Interesting. Tequila and
And
coffee.
yeah, and it's like, a lot of people I think understand the difference between tequila and mezcal, right? Like mezcal is
Yeah, it's more
actually,
smoky.
yeah, it tends to be more smoky, but if you get the right kind, it's not, because I overheard actually when we were in Milan, and we went to a mezcal bar, and the guy there was talking. He was like a connoisseur expert of mezcal and tequila, and he was saying that the smoky flavor of, or the smoky notes of mezcal was actually created by mistake,
Mm.
and
It's
because
like
the
bourbon,
people,
similar.
yeah, and like they let it like cook or smoke a little bit too long.
Yeah.
But when people started drinking it and they heard about it and it was like, oh, it's this amazing drink, it's supposed to be like that, people thought that that's what it's supposed to be like. Well, there's a bunch out there that aren't smoky, and if
Okay.
anything, are just a tad bit smoky. So I like to get a good mezcal,
Right.
and I've obviously, like, mezcal is clean and it's not a lot of sugar in it. And then if you get like a good coffee to go with it, you make that into a nice mezcal martini or whatever. Like, it's my go-to drink. So
There you
so
go.
basically I was having that, and then I would mix, like, every time I would have a drink, I would have like a cap full of the KE4. So I
Right.
would finish a drink, have a cap full of KE4, finish a drink, cap full.
Now to Steelman, the other side, was this enough? Were you drinking enough to where for sure normally if you had that same amount the next day you'd be hungover?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Like, keep in mind, this was my birthday, right? So it wasn't like,
Okay,
and
yeah,
it,
true.
and
Yeah,
people
you're
were like, "Come on, you got a drink. I bought you a drink." And so
yeah,
it's just
yeah.
like I
Your
turn
peer
around and
pressure
they're
was
trying to,
real.
yeah. I mean, we went to dinner, and then we went to this adult video game place where you can, like, we were throwing axes and
Yeah,
darts and
I know
playing
that.
basketball and stuff. And then we went to a little club afterwards, like a record launch, like the Black Keys, where they were DJing and releasing a DJ record. And so all of that meant drinks, right?
Yeah.
And I usually say to people, I can count on one hand how many times I drink in a year, but I had at least 5 drinks in
Right.
that night,
Yeah,
you
that's how
know?
you are.
So yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
then, I mean, then that's strong evidence. That's strong evidence. I think there's hope
Yeah.
to cure the hangover.
Right. Right. And I
Which
just
I don't
say,
know if it's a good thing, because then because that going to make them more audacious, because they're like, oh, well, now there's no.
right. Well,
Hopefully,
I mean, and it's a good point, Gordon, but like, who
they're
wants to
still
be
effective.
hungover, right? Who wants to be
Yeah.
hungover?
Yeah.
And also, let's face it, the more a person drinks, the more expensive it is, the
Mhm.
more chance for a hangover. So I kind of feel like people don't want to experience that. And a
Right.
lot of times it happens by accident, so to speak. So if you have something that can kind of help mitigate that a little bit,
Oh,
I'm
for
not going to
sure.
say it's going to completely wipe it out, then why not? And then I do think that people should be eventually just going to the keto hall, which is,
Mm.
because there's 2 ways I did it that night. I had
Right.
I had
Right.
2 keto hall drinks. Then I went out and had all the
But
other drinks.
but they gotta have the espresso mezcal keto hall drink.
Right, right, exactly. Well, yeah, we got to talk, Frank. Come on, Frank. We got
Very
to talk.
niche, Frank.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But anyway, yeah, I mean, we're going on a tangent, obviously, but it was one of the best birthday celebrations I've ever
For
had. I
sure.
went to this amazing restaurant. Um, Roger's ex son-in-law, his name is Crispin. He's the owner of this amazing place called El Pastor in London. They have one in Soho and they have one somewhere else in the city of London. I went there, had amazing food. He hooked it up. It was great. So shout out to those guys. And then I went to I forget the name of the arcade place that we went to, but that was like, it was a blast because everything was kind of like by happenstance, like we didn't
Hmm.
really plan too much except dinner, and everything else just kind of lined up beautifully. So that was good.
Awesome.
Yeah. Um
Well, kind of leading into that, I know we led off to the start of the episode with we hit on some of the hacks and things, but as far as I guess we can kind of transition into talking about the book club and some of the upcoming events. I know you're pretty excited about going down.
Yeah, yeah. So in terms of like the book club, you may have seen the content clip that was posted in which I talk about how I utilize all of my reading, and the fact that I'm doing a book a week is kind of it's a big deal to do a book a week. And I like to have flashcards, so to speak, to help me remember a lot of the content, because let's face it, when you read a book a week, or if you're an avid reader and you read a lot, you're going to forget a lot of the things that you may want to have remembered. And so when you have these little flashcards from an app called Readwise, when you have those things pop up from the things you've highlighted in your various books, whether it's a physical book or it's a digital book or an audiobook, like you can input all this stuff so that it flashes at you daily. And they just randomly choose however many you select, but I usually get 5, and it just randomly selects 5 flashcards from various different books that I've read over the years. And that's a really good way for me to remember some of the content that I read. So I see you were playing that clip. It's also on my Instagram. But yeah, it's a very, very interesting way. And people ask me all the time, like, Josh, like, how can I follow you in your books, and you should do a book club. And I've kind of done that, but we're going to take it to the next step. So if you want to follow me on Goodreads, um I think you can link to that, right? You can
Yeah,
link to
I'll
that.
I'll I'll have it in the description, and your Goodreads account for people to follow along for sure.
Right. And then the flashcard app is, I call it a flashcard app. It's way more than that, but that's called Readwise. So
Yeah.
the use of Readwise and Goodreads is, I think, a really good foundation for creating a book club that we can all benefit from. So be on the lookout for that. And then speaking of book clubs, throughout the craziness of being on tour, I also wrote a new book, and it should be out very soon. It's based on the 15 by 5 workout concept that I created. And my goal was to try to get that completed by my birthday, but that did not happen. So it's all good.
Yeah.
I did do some photos with my brother while I was in Oklahoma City recently for Father's Day. So some of his work is going to be in this new book. I think it's going to be just an ebook for now. But be on the lookout for that, because that was a huge undertaking for me, because it was my first book that I wrote by myself. And this all happened while I was on tour.
And what's the name
Yeah.
of that?
So it's going to be called the 15 by 5
Okay.
workout program. Yeah.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
And then I know you're also stoked. We can show some footage of your upcoming retreat, the
Yes.
awareness experience.
Yeah. So the awareness experience retreat, for those that expressed interest, we sent out a PDF. I say we, Marie and I, who was also on the podcast, we sent out PDFs for people who were looking for more information, and we had a handful of people sign up, which is exciting. That is kicking off July 6th through the 12th. And I'm looking forward to going. I've got a few friends that are going, and it's going to be an amazing time. So be on the lookout for that kind of content. We're going to be doing everything from going to see like glowworms, and we're going to have amazing dinners, and I'm going to be taking everyone through movements in the morning and movements in the evenings, and we're going to be playing like adult games, things like Twister, which many of us haven't played in ages. Things that like will stimulate our body and mind.
Yeah.
But to create this cohesive community, I think it's going to be a blast. So definitely looking forward to that. And then one final thing that I would love to talk about, which I think is super poignant, especially being that Father's Day just passed recently. My father has been in the hospital. He's been in what they call LTAC, which is a long-term acute care facility. That's basically an in-between hospital and nursing home. So it's a long-term facility. And my dad was morbidly obese, is morbidly obese. And when he was administered to the hospital over a year ago, he was at he was 508 pounds, 508. Okay. Most people don't expect that from Josh, the fitness trainer and health coach's dad, right? But that is the case. Okay. That's real. And, he's had his ups and downs. Like I remember literally leaving Gstaad to go to England. And as I'm getting on the airplane to come, I get a phone call from my dad saying that, he was afraid to go to sleep because he was having dreams that were freaking him out and he thought he was going to die. Right. Like this is heavy stuff. So here I am freaking out a little bit, about to go on, I'm supposed to embark on this amazing tour and all these things. And I'm here dealing with that. Right. So anyway, he fortunately has bounced back and is doing really, really well. As of a couple of days ago, he now weighs 289 pounds.
Wow.
So he's lost over 200 pounds.
Yeah.
He's doing a lot better. His spirits are great. And as I listen to various podcasts, one of the ones that I listen to consistently is Joe Rogan. And there was an episode in which I was in the car. I forgot what I was doing, but I was in the car and I was listening to this podcast, and it was with Jelly Roll. Jelly Roll was the guest on the show, amazing artist. And I didn't know much about Jelly Roll, but I learned a lot in that episode. But one of the things that I thought about was like, wow, this man has cried more on this episode than any other guest that I can recall, because I've listened to almost all of Joe Rogan's podcast. And this guy was not afraid to show his vulnerability. And anyway, he started talking about this guy, William Tongi, who ended up winning American Idol. But when he was on the show, he hadn't won yet. And I was listening to this part where, because Joe didn't know who Tongi was, and Jelly Roll introduced Tongi to Joe, and they listened to his song. And when I'm listening to that song, of the audition there at American Idol, I just started tearing up and welling up because he's singing about his father, and also the sort of the juxtaposition or the situation in the fact that Tongi is very obese himself. It helped to kind of allow me to think about my dad and what I would say to my dad while he might be passing away, right? And this,
Yeah.
oh man, it just even now, like I feel this emotions coming up, and so it forced me to stop everything I was doing and to create a clip, and that's the clip that I put on my Instagram and on my Facebook. And it's the first clip that has ever gone like viral for me. Like it's got nearly 2 million views on Facebook. It's got 150,000 views on Instagram. And I just kind of thought, man, I see what people need sometimes. They just need to be heard and they need to be felt. And it's okay to be vulnerable. It's very much
For
okay to
sure.
be vulnerable. So
And I think
yeah.
it kind of transitions and ties in really nicely, sort of wrapping things here with as we move forward with content and really trying to, as we've been talking about kind of before the show and behind scenes, is, what does the simply walk the talk ethos mean? And what kind of content do you want to integrate and add moving forward that help to show this? And so, if you want to kind of touch on some of the stuff you have going forward, but I think vulnerability is a huge part of that. And that's just one of many things right now: vulnerability, courage, people being able to be loving to those they might have emotions towards. Um, Why don't you kind of, touch on some of that and some of the things people can be excited about looking forward?
Yeah, absolutely. It's you and I had a discussion about how now that I'm back, kind of refocusing what I want to do with the show and kind of where we want to take it. And it goes back to the ethos of simply walking the talk and being authentic and not being afraid to touch on controversial topics and not being afraid of rubbing people the wrong way and the fear that we might lose a follower or lose a friend or whatever, because we all have a voice. And I feel like when I'm listening to some of these other podcasts, I love how people can be very neutral, but I also like when certain people can be challenged. And I want to start bringing on people from a wider variety of backgrounds. So everything from comedians to musicians, authors, spiritual leaders. I want to do more. Like I love when I happen to have a situation where we can talk about sex and we can talk about relationships and we can talk about all kinds of stuff like psychedelics. Like I want to be able to talk about all these things, and Gordon and I are going to do our best to stay on top of the trending topics and hot topics, right? Like for instance, one of the things that's trending right now is the Peter Hotez and Joe Rogan and who's the other guy?
Well, an RFK, the
Oh
presidential
yes,
candidate.
yeah,
Yeah, the
RFK.
big debate. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and that right now, I mean, it's an insane amount of money. And not that money should be the ultimate motivator, but it is a motivator. And like I want to be able to discuss some of these things in a way that allows you as the listener and as the viewer to understand how my mind works, because
Mm,
I'm listening to all these things and I'm watching all these things and it's a part of me and my life.
mm.
So of course I'm going to have some kind of view on that. And what is
Right.
that view? And I want to be able to talk about that.
And
And
I think something you mentioned, and you don't have to go too into detail, but just whether you like it or not, part of your world, having developed this deep relationship with Roger, is his world, which is very, he welcomes the slings and arrows, right? And he'll put them in big letters on his massive stage, in a very sort of, I welcome sort of FDR Teddy type thing. But I know you touched on a little bit of just even being associated with Roger has maybe, if you maybe weren't as much before, but maybe has, kind of almost forced you to be a little bit more aware of certain issues. And I know you've dealt with a little bit of some mudslinging your way from just being associated, but do you want to touch on that a little bit as well? Just
yes,
sort of.
absolutely. And I'll save the bulk of it for when we do get Roger on the show, because he's
Sure.
agreed to do that at some point. So let's see how that goes. But you're 100% right. I look at this as a a crash course, almost like a university master degree level course on politics, on social media, on you know, like how someone can be just thrown in the mud, dragged through the mud, and people not really realize what the real truth is. Because I spend every day with this guy and I see what he stands for, but the media has really convoluted it in a way to fit a certain narrative. And then without even trying to fact check, each entity is just kind of like running with the previous entity, right? So it's just like, oh, you saw that there was a flying pig with a Star of David on it. It's like, well, first of all, that has never been in a show that I've ever been a part of. And I've been working with him for 2 world tours, right? So that's many different tours around the world, hundreds of shows. And I haven't seen that one time. So that's one thing. Secondly, on that pig was also other religious faiths and the symbols that attached to other religions as well. Because the idea was that he was trying to show how religious dogma is forcing us to be disturbed, so to speak, right? So it wasn't just, it's like, obviously there's certain groups that get really up in arms over various things, but then they just run with that, right? So it's things like that I kind of think like, wow, man, like this is someone who's really walking the talk, because he stands by what he believes, which is all humans should have rights, regardless of X, Y, and Z, and part of his main mission is the rights for Palestinians, which almost immediately it goes against the Israeli lobby. So,
and it's obviously a sensitive issue, and I think you and I are both good at understanding nuance and critical thinking, and we're not trying to come at this with some sort of preconceived narrative or agenda. Really, I think everyone has their biases. That's just part of being a human being. But I think one of the key things you kind of hit on early on there is understanding, and that's part of my world and being kind of behind the scenes and having worked in advertising and media and different things. A lot of it is, as they'd say, optics and narrative control, and these ideas of understanding just how the system works and understanding, how it's important to go to the horse versus getting third-hand knowledge, these kind of things. Now more than ever, one of the key things for simply walking the talk, and not, walking the talk in a way that's, fearful or angry. This, when we say walk the talk, I think you would back this up here. It's like being the best version of yourself and walking the talk, right? And a big part of that in today's world is having discernment, having the ability to discern credible information from incredible, having an open mind, hearing both sides. I know you're a big fan of the idea of steel manning an argument, which is just basically trying to understand both perspectives of an argument, and then to, suss out the best logic from, or the best, what rises to the top from both, merits, based on sort of a meritocracy of ideas, and not making it into something personal. Things immediately divulge into personal attacks nowadays so easily, and whatever side you're on, that's just a common way that people use and know is a logical fallacy to not have a discussion, to sort of disregard somebody. And we're not about that here. We don't want to support that. And when we talk about these things, we're not going to come at it from that angle. But I see it, and I think a lot of people find it very refreshing if you and I and others, guests and people we have on and content, can do these things in a more refreshing way, but a way that's needed. Ultimately, this is what this comes down to. This is health. This is global health optimization in a way too.
Well said. Yeah, beautifully put. And again, I do want people to challenge us, and like you said, like steel manning, for what I believe that is basically just being able to have an argument, so to speak, or have a position on both sides or all sides. And when we can do that as a community, I think people will pause before they make a reaction based on something that triggers them right away. It's like, I can recall people sending me messages when I was on tour, like, oh my gosh, you see what they put about Roger in the papers? And I'm like, of course I've seen it. We all see it. And then, then a few of my friends like will send me messages saying like, this is just clickbait, right? And I'm like, yeah, you get it. You get it
Yeah.
now, you know?
Yeah. No,
So
the conditioning has less and less of an effect. The more you become aware and awake, whatever term you want to use, but the conditioning has less and less of an effect. And as sort of wrapping things here is just sort of a side note for the audience, and Josh and I talked about some of the fun content we're also going to be coming up with. I know you want to show some of the cool when you are on tour, sort of the travel and cultural stuff, aesthetically cool shots, restaurants, nightlife, music, kind of the best of the world and people have to offer, and then some fun, workout content and some interesting dance stuff coming up. So we want to mix it up. It's not all going to be doom and gloom, but it's holistic.
Yeah, we're gonna just try to make this show more fun and try to sort of cater to more people because, like you said, it's real, right? Like there's all this stuff that's out there, and I'm doing it, but now I'm just gonna start capturing it, right? So that's that.
For sure.
Cool. All right, man. Well, this was fun. This was certainly a lot longer than I anticipated. This is yet again my attempt to try to do a 30-minute podcast. It just never happens, but it's all good. It's all out of love. It's good to catch up with you, Gordon. And I'm happy to be back. And for all the listeners and viewers, stay tuned because we're going to be coming at you with loads and loads of content. This is Josh signing out. Peace.
Simply walk the talk.
Walk the talk, talking facts. Move like me, but I move a little fast. Make my move, here to last. Fasten these seatbelts, I'm coming past. Take care of me, longevity. Hack my biology, better believe. Walking the talk, soul, mind, and body connected. Better come give us a listen.